For the last decade, tactical shooters have sent us back to Normandy, Fallujah, and, well, way beyond. I mean, the amount of World War II shooters that we've had is pretty hefty. But one era, one gritty, cinematic, and pretty emotionally raw conflict has almost been completely ignored. You see, tactical shooters have always been Hell Let Loose, Cold World War II, Postscript, and even your modern stuff like Battlefield 2042, Squad, that kind of stuff. Even pushing into the more realistic stuff like Armor as well. They've always been avoiding one particular conflict. And this is Vietnam. So why has Vietnam just not got the love? Of course, it was explored briefly within the Battlefield franchise. Rising Storm 2 Vietnam was, of course, the last big notable Vietnam title, but that was on an outdated engine. It pretty much doesn't have a player base anymore, and it's kind of been left in the dirt. But there was one other hope. This was called Burning Lands. It promised to come back, and it was looking pretty good. It was hoping to be the Hell Let Loose Vietnam of its time, but it never actually came into fruition because of, well, developer scandals. Does anybody know whether the lead dev is actually still in prison? I don't know. But the itch was starting to build up, and the community wanted something. A real hardcore shooter set within Vietnam that had strong backing, strong, predetermined player base, and finally we're actually going to have it. Hell Let Loose Vietnam is on its way. I actually cannot believe it. Genuinely, this is best news I've had since my 14th child. Genuinely, having Hell Let Loose go to Vietnam, boy oh boy oh boy. It couldn't be a better series with more in-tune developers, at least at this point in time, to go and do that. You see, Hell Let Loose is based upon really great mixes and combinations between hardcore and arcadey mechanics that create this cacophony of a beautiful FPS game, where you have 50 versus 50 players, each with their own ranks, of course having the captain or the commander that would set down ammo drops or supply drops across the whole map, tank commanders that would be informed of where the enemy Shermans were, being able to pop a shot off from a distance, or of course the captains of each squad having their own people to command, chatting to all the other captains of squads, and of course their own gunners, mechanics, artillery lads. It is the perfect FPS multiplayer shooter in my point of view. And that coming to Vietnam, well, that is going to be something special. This is actually quite different. This is actually going to be a standalone entry into the franchise. It's not an expansion. You don't need the original Hell Let Loose to actually play this game. No. Hell Let Loose Vietnam will be a completely new game. When's it coming? Well, actually not that long into the future. 2026, which I'm sorry to really hurt the way you feel right now, but that's not that far away. It's going to be coming onto PC with, of course, Steam, Epic, and Windows, PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, with a brand new Unreal Engine 5 codebase. Of course, Hell Let Loose recently got its Unreal Engine 5 update, but we're going to get something even better, with a game that was entirely made for UE5. It's going to have better dynamic weather, it's going to have beautiful terrain, incredible maps that are so big that we're really going to need more vehicles. And don't worry, they'll also be coming as well. But let's talk about the core identity of what makes Hell Let Loose so great and how that can be transitioned into Hell Let Loose Vietnam. Of course, it's the 50 versus 50 battles. This is one of the most perfect sizes for this type of game. It's enough players so it feels like a proper war, but it also isn't so many that there is too much going on and you're constantly being shot from out of nowhere. Of course, it has to be in conjunction with the size of the maps. I think Hell Let Loose have got it pretty spot on with their map size, and of course how to traverse between the points of each capture area. Not just this, but the realism. How can we get hardcore realism into the game while still making it fun? You see, a game like Postscriptum, now Squad 44, is a bit too far on the hardcore shooter. I mean, its mechanics are way too clunky, and it tries to lean way more into stamina and having to keep your tea drinking skills up in order to stay at least fit for battle. And these are things that are cool and nice quirks, but if I'm going to be honest, they lean way more into keeping your character in good condition rather than just focusing on good combat and communication between players. And don't get me wrong, Hell Let Loose has its issues with communication because of this arcadiness, especially if I've heard on consoles, people communicate less and less, but when they do, boy, it is perfect. And I do think that Hell Let Loose has that perfect match between realism and, of course, the way that it actually has to be fun. Squad coordination will be something that comes back to Vietnam as well, and these are all core concepts that Hell Let Loose have brought up that are going to be transitioned into the new game. It will be platoon-based gameplay now, teamwork-first gameplay. Yes, you can't be doing this alone, and it really maintains, or at least they're saying it's going to maintain what made Hell Let Loose so popular, but reimagined for Vietnam. In fact, I think this is the perfect conflict for it. Vietnam isn't such huge scale to the fact that you you can't have this severe teamwork-orientated gameplay. So having that within this new Hell Let Loose game is going to be a lot easier than I think what World War II is. But let's talk a little bit about the setting and, of course, the junglers that will be fighting him. This is the conflict, of course, between 1965 US forces versus the North Vietnamese army. There'll be historically authentic uniforms, weapons, vehicles, and armor. 6 maps at launch inspired by real operations like Starlight and Piranha. There's going to be rice fields, rivers, beaches, jungles, rolling hills, and possibly an urban map later on. This is going to be entirely a new game, and of course, the developers, there is going to be a focus on both Hell Let Loose and Hell Let Loose Vietnam at the same time. Now, none of the maps are going to be one-to-one recreations because, well, they'd just be way too big, but definitely grounded within historical accuracy. Every map feeling cinematic, distinct, and chaotic in its own way. There'll be rapid troop deployment, supply drops, recon, aerial firepower. I mean, it is kind of perfect for the Hell Let Loose mechanics. In the original Hell Let Loose game, you're able to call in bombing runs that can just cause a landing strip across the whole map if placed in the right area. They can take out outposts, garrison spots, tanks if you're careful, and whole squadrons. And this is definitely going to be something that would fit within that Vietnam warfare theater. Boy, is it going to be absolutely brutal. There's going to be a lot of stuff like new helicopters added into the game on the US side. It'll be an absolute game changer in mobility. This is something that we're going to be seeing very, very soon. But what about some new different mechanics? Other than helicopters, what about on the North Vietnamese army? Well, of course, there are going to be tunneling networks, expansions of the garrison systems, hidden redeployment, flanking, ambushes, a new mechanic specifically for sneaking around under the ground, and almost an entirely new asymmetric gameplay with, guerrilla tactics that we haven't seen in Hell Let Loose. That is going to be special. And it's all going to be completely dynamic, being able to move from above ground to underground seamlessly and fighting within these tunnels. There will also be river warfare. We haven't had this within Hell Let Loose, actual on-sea stuff. I mean, of course, you have the Omaha beach maps in Hell Let Loose where you can come out of these landing crafts, but there is really not much fighting other than once you get onto the beach. But the US are going to have heavily armed PBRs, the jet-powered boats that can cascade down these narrow rivers, and of course have heavy machine guns on them. And all maps will be built with these river networks, so you're going to be able to fight from rivers to land and of course air in helicopters. There will be stealthy maneuverable boats for ambush tactics for the Vietnamese army, and of course controlling the river is very important for controlling the map. They're going to be choke points for infantry and of course tanks that are going to have to be utilized to pristine effect. So how is this game going to look? How is it going to feel? Well, Unreal Engine is going to be the complete rebuild for this game. There'll be a fresh code base, no more spaghetti mess from the classic Hell Let Loose, major improvements in visuals, audio performance, and gameplay systems, and a full tutorial system, mortar squads, expanded roles, and commander abilities. Now, Hell Let Loose has more recently had its tutorial expanded. Well, this is something that has been needed for a long, long time. They just haven't had proper tutorials within their games, and I think it's really hurt the accessibility. We want people to enjoy it and communicate with each other, but it's not been possible when new players just haven't been told this new way of playing. So adding that into Hell Let Loose Vietnam is a great positive in my opinion. This isn't just Hell Let Loose with a Vietnam skin, it feels like a complete transformation. So how is it going to work in relation with the original? Is the original still going to receive development? Well, yes. Hell Let Loose Vietnam will be developed in parallel with World War II Hell Let Loose. Neither replaces the other. Improvements may be tested on one and then be put into the other, flow between them and expand both games, hopefully for the better. The devs are committed to growing both communities simultaneously, which I think is incredibly important. I think it's very, very easy for a new game to come out and the player base be completely split or then just rush from one to the other. But if they can offer enough unique differences with this new game, there should be no reason why players won't enjoy playing both at the same time. I cannot wait for what's coming. DLC is planned. I'm assuming it's going to be very similar to Hell Let Loose's DLCs, where it's some skins and things like that rather than anything actually huge. But this actually does really matter for the Hell Let Loose community. I think people have been frustrated with how Hell Let Loose has been in the last couple of years because of its Team 17 takeover, but this shows that actually the big push is the resources and the experience that this bigger company have. And this hopefully could mean a complete change around with the way that Hell Let Loose functions from this point onwards. For years, the Vietnam War has been overlooked in this tactical shooter space, but with this game, a gritty, authentic, asymmetrical Vietnam experience with the scale and intensity that Hell Let Loose is known for, it could be perfect. It's not just a new setting, it's a new era. The battle for Vietnam will be coming to Hell Let Loose in 2026 as in the form of an entirely new game. And I guess the only thing to say now is I'll see you in the jungle.